everybody, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to my continual rating of all the heroes and villains in Marvel United. Now I'm just rating them based on how much I like playing them. We're definitely in the middle of the pack here. I called this video straightforward because a lot of these heroes and villains are fairly straightforward to play. They're the ones that I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll play them, but I'm not necessarily going to pick them in my top 10. But hey, why? Why not? Let's find out. All right, well, we're going to start out the heroes here, taking a look at Drax. Now, Drax has an F in heroics because he doesn't have any. That's the problem with Drax. I mean, he's a fighter. I mean, look at that. He's one of the strongest fighters in the game. And this card, moving clockwise to where there's any enemies and fighting them, is good. It's not as good as you might think. Like at the end, you're like, ooh, I can use it to get the villain. Well, you can as long as there's no thugs in the way. And because of that, yeah, you're looking for a powerhouse, you're going to stick him on the team. He's well worth his while in that regard. He's strong, but you better have someone who is super heroic to balance him out because he's really deficient. And it's not like his movement's that great either. And if you're playing on the hard modes where you take out the wild cards, whew. That being said, I still have a soft spot for Drax, partially because I like the character a lot, but I also think that he's a fun one to play. You just want to get in there and just brutalize. I mean, one thing that Drax can do, and there's a good thing about Drax, is you can bring him on, if you are playing a 3-person team, which is what I normally play, bring on 2 heroic characters. And those heroic characters are going to feel pretty strong because, you know, having Drax on either side of one of their 2 sides is going to give them some fighting icons. Elektra, Drax, they're not that much different. Well, Drax is more powerful than Elektra is, and she has one more heroic thing, but also just not fantastic in that regard. Her movement's better. She has some nice things like Master Assassin, do a damage in one and both adjacent locations, or this one does an extra 2. It also says you don't take any damage to the beginning of your next turn. That's okay. The problem is, you very rarely know if you're going to take damage on the next turn. Now, if you're playing in one of those villains where at the end of your turn you take damage at a certain location, she's worth it. She's good, and in fact, you know, since putting this list together, I could see Elektra dropping, though, because she's not especially exciting. I like the character. I like the model. I like most of these characters. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would even take Drax over her. She's slightly more nuanced than him. Maybe that's why she's a little bit ahead. Again, remember the title of this video is straightforward because that's what most of these characters are. Luke Cage is definitely an example of that. So Luke Cage, you know, again, not super heroic. He's okay. He's not as powerful as the other 2, but he has some nice cards. I like anyone who has the healing factor to draw 2 cards. And this card, Superhuman Strength, could be good. You have as many extra strength as a number of cards in your hand. If you get an extra cards, or for example, if you play it after regenerative healing factor, you know, you do something in a row, you can make a pretty big punch. And here he can't take damage, but drawing the card is the better factor of that. So he's a very straightforward character. Again, he's not the kind of character that I would necessarily pick to be on my team at any given point. But if I'm wanting to fill out around a corner, and also I really like Luke Cage's character, so maybe I'd pick it because of that. Now, Captain Marvel's biggest problem is maybe just that, I don't know actually what the problem is, that you have the same card. Like her Photon Blasts are really cool. They do a damage and then 2 damage in an adjacent location. They don't always work. Sometimes it's not so useful, you know, when you're punching the main bad guy at the end of the game. These aren't as useful as you might think. I'm like, oh, I hit you for 1 and I'm also going to take out a couple thugs. Or I'm trying to hit the thug and then hit the bad guy for 2. But they're still pretty powerful. She has a lot of fighting. She's very good. She's somewhat well-rounded. And she has an extra single wild. That's a big deal to me. I really like having an extra single wild, and that's what puts her above the other people that we've seen so far. Having an extra wild is nothing to scoff at. Korg is a real fun character. I think I like him and Drax equally as characters, but I'll tell you why he's higher here is because even though he's a good fighter, and I like his card better than Captain Marvel's because, again, this does a damage in both adjacent locations or 2 in your location. That's more versatile, and I really like it. He also has some cards here with diverse icons on them. I like that. A move heroic, a move fight, a heroic fight. He has a couple, you know, single cards and all, but good fighting overall. I'll put him on my team for fighting power, but he's also not hampered. He has some heroics. He has some, not much movement. And so I don't know. I just think that and I like his special card. It's the same one all 3 times. I'm not as keen on that, but it's a pretty good card. All right, time for the villains here. I've talked a lot about villains who you just straight up fight. Black Dwarf is one of the hardest of these. I've yet to beat him, but I know he's beatable. One of the things I like about him, he comes after people, and he does a damage each person's location. Here's the deal, though. If he does the axe swing, he's doing 1 damage to you and adjacent locations. As long as chain hammer's in play, he also hits adjacent locations. Not only that, he's doing damage to each hero in those locations. You want to stay out of those. And super toughs. There's 2 of those in play, and there's 2 chain hammers in play. These make his BAMs worse. Super tough means he ignores a damage in play. So you've got to take out both super toughs. You probably want to take out the chain hammers and stay away from the charges. And when I first played Black Dwarf, I did not look at his cards. And when his healing factor came up, I was like, what? Heals 3 health. And if he's at full health, he does 1 damage each hero on his location instead. So it's not good either way. But he's fairly straightforward. You're just going to want to take a big fighter in. You'll have some heroics, take care of this stuff. You definitely want that gone. But when I'm playing him, the first thing I'm doing is take out a chain hammer. And on second turn 2, can we take out the other chain hammer? That makes him a little easier. The super toughs aren't as big of a deal. At the beginning of the game, you want to get rid of those before the end. But you definitely want to knock out those chain hammers. So he's pretty straightforward and can be fun to play against. So Bullseye has a very straightforward thing here. By the way, he's another person. He's the 3rd one so far that we've looked at. When you have KO tokens equals a number of heroes, he's trying to knock you out. But these 2 cards, diversions, if they're in play, you can't beat Bullseye. You can't win. So you have to take these 2 things out. So that's, you don't take them out right away. And in fact, it's not a bad idea maybe to leave those for later, because maybe getting rid of the hiding places so he can't take damage. But these aren't initial threats on you as much. It's more of you want to take care of the things. When I'm playing Bullseye, it might be better to rescue civilians and defeat thugs and then worry about this stuff, taking out the diversions, staying out of these spots, and keeping Bullseye out of his hiding place. He doesn't have a ton of things, but he's going to come after you. He'll move clockwise to a place where there's no heroes, and then he does 2 damage to each hero, and the locations adjacent to that. It's really dangerous. Or he hits the person opposite him. So he doesn't hit you in the same spot. He's a ranged attacker. And I like that. He's always that way. Even his BAMs, he does 1 damage if you're in locations next to him. That's kind of an interesting thing, and he feels different than... Black Dwarf is fun to play against. He's a big, nasty creature, but Bullseye feels different. Now, this is where I wondered if I might get some pushback. Red Skull, and you're like, wait a minute, you're saying Red Skull's 15? He's halfway, the midpoint between the villains? He's one of the easiest villains to beat. He is. He is one of the easiest villains to beat. I like Red Skull because he's a great intro character and because he's one of the more diverse characters. He brings in some people who fight with him. Bob, Agent of Hydra, Madam Hydra, and Crossbones. Bob, Agent of Hydra, 1 point there. He has different cards that he's coming through. He has a track where you're trying to get to 20, so you're trying to stop that with the BAM. He's increasing this fear track every time he does BAM. He's an interesting person. He's a good introduction to this game. And even though he's probably the one I played the most against, because again, he's the intro character, I don't dislike it. I don't think he's a bad villain to play against at all. And I like the fact that he's a good intro. He's a good way for me to test out new heroes. And for new people, especially, he's fun. Whatever, I'm not new. And I still enjoy playing against Red Skull. So those are the villains we're taking a look at today. And here's the sets that these different characters came from. Alrighty, well, man, stuff just keeps getting better and better. Wait till you see the stuff we're going to talk about next time. I bet there's going to be some arguments coming. But hey, maybe some of these characters are your favorites. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching me rate all the heroes and villains in Marvel United.